Welcome, everybody. Is everybody in from the back? It's great to see a full house. So welcome to the College of the Atlantic. My name is Darren Collins. I am the college's president, and though many of you may be tired of me hearing me say this, I am also an alumnus from the class of 1992. And we're honored to present a special screening of the film Mission of Mermaids by Cohn Rockefeller. It's always dangerous when the introduction has multiple pages, but just bear with me here. The film's a call to action for the protection of the ocean, but it's also an exploration of the personal relationship between Susan and the sea, and between the sea and humanity, and that's important. Now, this may come to a surprise to you, but at the College of the Atlantic, we don't have a marine program. Yet, our alumni have worked to establish one of the world's most important marine protected areas. We also have a recent graduate who's pioneered the study of microplastics in the Atlantic. Our current students as undergraduates design, execute, publish, and then present extraordinary research conducted from the college's offshore islands or from our new research vessel Osprey. And our COA faculty have led the conservation of marine environments right out there in Frenchman Bay and around the world. So how could this be? You know, there's no marine program, yet tremendous results within the world's oceans. I'll tell you that it's because we may not have a marine program or department, but we actively and passionately approach the issues of the marine environment through the lens of human ecology. This means simply, students design their own targeted curriculum within the marine environment. They come to understand the issues of marine environments through hands-on experiential learning, and they solve those problems by applying not just the methodology of the natural sciences, but also of the humanities and the visual arts. For example, I swear to you, just a few hours ago, I got a call from our boat captain. Now, when a boat captain calls a college president, that can cause panic, right? Because you could say only bad things can happen there. But the call went like this: Darren, hey, we just came across a perfectly intact, absolutely stunning, however dead, 50-foot male sperm whale at the mouth of Frenchman Bay. We want to do the necropsy and then decompose the skeleton at the farm. Can we do that? And I thought to myself, oh my God, our poor farm manager. You know, he's just hired. This guy's saying, what? You don't want to bury a whale at the farm? But I said, yes, of course we can do it, whatever it takes, because our students will work with staff and faculty to do the necropsy. If the cause of death is a boat strike, they will work to design local policy to avoid future strikes. They will work with artists and curators to re-articulate the skeleton. They'll design a museum and education program around the skeleton. They may even write a novel or do a film about it. So it's a targeted curriculum, hands-on experiential learning, and multidisciplinary problem solving. That's the fuel to the COA fire. And so Susan's work is a perfect embodiment of human ecology. That's why I'm so excited. There's no more powerful medium, I believe, than film to inspire action. And Susan has done this successfully over and over again with her past films, from looking at post-traumatic stress disorder within soldiers in her film Striking the Chord, from looking at Ethiopia's poorest and most destitute in her film Making the Crooked Straight, or at ocean acidification in the award-winning film that I just watched, A Sea Change, and that was fantastic. Loved it. These are all very, very powerful films because, like the film we'll see tonight, I think they make a very intimate and personal connection between the ocean and how big it is and individuals and humanity. And like a good human ecologist, Susan doesn't just stop at film. She's embedded her films into action-oriented websites. She's on the board of Oceana, who I deeply respect as an extremely important non-government organization dedicated to ocean conservation. She's on the Global Leadership Council of the Natural Resources Defense Council, another group that's tremendous. She's that rare combination of filmmaker and game changer, and that's extraordinary. We're excited. So this is the way tonight's going to work. Yeah. truly extraordinary. But tonight, what we'll do, Susan will come up. She'll give a very, very brief hello and intro. We're going to show the film, Mission of Mermaids. It runs about 15 minutes. We will then invite David Rockefeller Jr. to come up, and we'll have an open conversation amongst themselves and with the audience, and then afterward we'll go out and we'll enjoy a nice glass of wine. So, without further delay, Susan Rockefeller.
Thank you for such a great introduction, and it's great to be here. And I know this has been one of the most beautiful days, warm and sunny, and probably many of you have just come off the water, and that story about finding the whale is amazing. And I want to say a few things. Just my sister graduated from COA in 1982 when Steve Katona was president, and my children that are here today, Annabelle and Henry, did 2 summers of the Summerfield Institute. So, okay. So I think what's so wonderful about COA is that you are really training the next leaders to really deal with such complex issues of sustainability, whether it's on land or on sea, whether it's through the camp programs and the college as well. And I think that human ecology, the whole idea of how do we understand our relationship to the systems that sustain us and keep us healthy is key. And I think only now there really is a sea change where people are realizing that we are a global commons, that we share the resources. We have increasing population going from 7 to 9 billion by 2050. And how are we going to feed a hungry planet? How are we going to maintain the resources? And on all levels that will impact the ocean, whether it's overfishing, whether it's carbon dioxide and ocean acidification. So the problems are enormous, and my hope with this film, it's a short film. It started out at 35 minutes, it went to 25. The final edit was 15, because my hope is that it will really take a viral component through digital streaming. And there's also a curriculum that Sydney Davis, who unfortunately is not here, she's biking up in Canada at the moment, but she is a Seal Harbor summer resident, and she's also on the board of Oceana. So we're teaming together to get the curriculum component that will go from 5th to 12th grade. I just want to say it's great to have my premiere main screening here at COA, and I want to thank Lissa Hodder and also John Kelly, because I think they were quite instrumental in, bringing the film to COA this summer for this series. So thank you so much for that. I won't say much about the film because it is my voiceover and personal poetic ode to why I love the ocean. But I just want to say that having made the film, co-produced the film on ocean acidification, it did very well, but it was very much focused on the science community. And what I wanted to do with this film was to really stretch our imaginations and look at ways of bringing in more people that might not be interested in the science but need to understand the importance of science to make any kind of policy change or any of the real changes that are needed to pass laws and enact legislation. So I used the myth of the mermaid and wanted to combine both the myth and science and statistics and story to tell a story and weave it in a way that will educate people, but they might not necessarily know that they're getting that. So I'll leave it at that, and then after the film, David and I will answer questions. I'll give an introduction to my husband, who many of you know here, who's an amazing ocean activist with the work he's done, an avid sailor, and we can take questions. So thank you so much for coming, and enjoy the film. So I just wanted to, well, thank you for being here. And also, just to let you know that the reason why there's really, really a long credit roll is because I only filmed for a day and a half, and everything was found on the internet or borrowed. So the whole idea was the concept of reuse and recycle, and to have a very low carbon footprint. So it was more of an experimental film in that way, but it meant a long, involved time dealing with legal issues and release forms and credits and all of that. But philosophically, that was one of the reasons I made the film, was to not have more people, funding more, visuals on fish when there's hundreds of thousands of hours of what you just saw available. But what I wanted to do is open up for Q&A, and I wanted to introduce my husband, David Rockefeller, who has a long history of loving the ocean and spending time. Obviously grew up here in Seal Harbor and is an avid sailor, and was on the Pew Ocean Commission, which was, 11 years ago now?
Yep.
11 years ago, which was a group of different specialists, activists, artists, scientists, legal people that came together to really look at what was the state of the oceans and how to make recommendations for the future. And out of that commission, David founded an organization called Sailors for the Sea, which is an organization that you can talk about, but essentially is to engage the boating and sailing community to be a new voice for ocean conservation, to really create a platform for education and be involved in ocean conservation. And also, the Pew Ocean Commission founded Oceana. One of the recommendations was to create a global nonprofit organization solely focused on ocean protection, and that is Oceana, and I'm on the board of Oceana. So both David and I love the ocean. I would say, David, you like to be on it, sailing. I like to be in it, swimming. And but I do race with David on his IOD, and Megan Harvey's here. She's a great part of our team. But there's many ways to get involved, and I think for me, having spent my childhood by the ocean, it's where I go. It's where I feel most at home, and I love it. It energizes me, and the mystery still abounds, and that's really what this film was trying, I hope, to portray, was that there's so much mystery, and the mermaid really is the symbol of all that's mysterious and all that's to be discovered if we keep the ocean abundant enough that we can discover. I think there's 1 million species that they're saying we haven't named yet in the ocean. So, but I'd like to just open it up to questions.
Great. There's one in the back.
How is this country doing in relation to other countries in being active in helping the ocean?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. Repeat the question.
So the question is, how is the U.S. doing compared to other countries? And what I would say is that each country has a 200-mile limit, for fishing. So a lot of the rules and regulations are based per country. You've got the high seas, and that's international, but there's a great opportunity for laws to be enforced country by country. And the U.S. has done, I think, very well. We've got lots of battles in other countries, but we've certainly made great strides, with the work of organizations like Oceana, Natural Resources Defense Council, Conservation International. So there has been lots of protection put into place. With that said, terrestrially, 12% of land is put into national parks, and there's less than 1% of marine protected areas in the ocean, yet the ocean's over 70% of the planet. So we've got a long ways to go to create protected areas globally.
And I would say as well that one area in which the U.S. has actually been really recalcitrant
Yeah, the high
is in the
seas.
signing of the Law of the Sea Treaty. There was another attempt this year, as you might have read, to pass it. The Senate is responsible for passing all treaties, and there are a certain number of senators who don't believe in treaties, don't believe that the U.S. should concede any of its power to global forces. And that has really put us, I think, in a very unfavorable position with regard to the collective negotiation about the commons beyond the 200-mile zone. So we're good in some ways, in other ways not as good. Yes, John?
Is there anywhere where regulation has led to recovery of the sea? Is there a good example of regulation working?
Well, I would say there's quite a few victories that you could point to. In Chile, Oceana bought out the trawlers, and they have protected the second largest coral reef in the world. So, you know, there are studies that show, like with the pollock industry in Alaska, Oceana was involved with other organizations to minimize the bycatch of the salmon, and now the salmon is rebounding. Same with, you know, crab. There's lots of examples that if you actually give the ocean time to rest and you enforce existing regulations and minimize the bycatch, you'll see a recovery.
Absolutely. Yes?
Tell us more about what you think about sustainable seafood and efforts to promote it, and especially efforts to promote more aquaculture to alleviate pressure on the ocean. It seems like the more I read about aquaculture, the more problems emerge.
I can start on that.
Okay, and then I'll...
Yeah, that's a really great question. As Daniel Pauly, the scientist in the film, said, aquaculture is here to stay. But the question is, will it be healthy for us and will it be sustainable? and the answer varies according, and I'm not a specialist nor a scientist, but what I understand is that the answer really does vary according to the methodology, according to the food that the fish is fed. For example, catfish, I believe tilapia, and a number of other fish are herbivores. They do not eat seafood protein, or they don't eat fish protein. They eat vegetable matter, and as long as the fish are not polluting the areas in which they are living, then that's probably a very sustainable and, as far as I know, healthy kind of aquaculture. On the other hand, salmon penning has often been done in a way that creates disease in the salmon, and even if it doesn't, the salmon are typically being fed something like 3 or 4 pounds of other seafood, often anchovies, for example, per pound of salmon that's harvested. So there are problems of reducing the biomass of the ocean by raising this delicious salmon, although I'm a great Alaska wild sockeye salmon eater. Had some great sockeye last night, bought on this island. But they're not perpetual supplies, so we got a real problem of demand being matched by adequate supply. Excuse me. Farmed fish have got to be a part of the solution, and so we need to be really inventive and careful and find ways to do this in a good manner. As I understand it, rope-hung mussels are very, very healthy, as long as the water that they're in is itself reasonably healthy. They're actually filters. So there's a lot of opportunity for farming, and there are a lot of technical and health challenges. It's a great, great question.
Yeah, I was just going to say that 50% of our fish is farmed, and something like 90% of it is farmed in China. And if you look at shrimp and the issues of shrimp farming with the mangroves and Thailand, there's a lot of ecological issues, and there's some great. The Monterey Bay Aquarium has great information. There's an app on sustainable seafood, and the same with Oceana. And I encourage everyone to look at that, just to know what is the best way to eat seafood if you're eating it, and what's the most sustainable. But I do think that especially the salmon farming, whether it's the crowded pens and the overuse and abuse of antibiotics, where they use sort of a cousin to Cipro, which is an antibiotic to get the sea lice out of the salmon. If they're not allowing us to use the antibiotics here and they get shipped elsewhere to grow the salmon, it can create an immunity for those that are are eating it. So I just think you really have to know what you're eating and really understand, really what David said, the protein ratio. So the tilapia is great. Anything that's more vegetative, oriented, and not. You have to look at the protein ratio.
There was a question here.
I was very interested in what the film had to say about plastics in the ocean, and especially plastic bags. And I know that in Ireland, there's a 30-cent charge for every plastic bag used at the grocery store. And assuming that such a thing could never be enacted in the United States nationally, I wonder if that could be accomplished locally, or local legislation be introduced. And are any of the nonprofit organizations developing model legislation or other ideas that can be implemented at a local level for local people to start solving the problems in their immediate area?
Well,
Maybe I should repeat the question and you could answer it.
okay, you repeat it and I'll answer.
Yeah. So, model of in Ireland of charging 30 cents a plastic bag, which I think is a great idea. I don't know what the right charge is, but it's a great concept. And how could we do that more here, locally or regionally, I think, was the essence of the question.
So, California did ban the plastic bag. And there is the Plastic Pollution Coalition is a great coalition. If you go online, they're doing great work, and they mobilize people in different states. The plastic bag, the amount of plastic bag is only 2% of all the plastic that's actually in the gyre that goes into the waste stream, which tells you how much plastic is out there, right? So, I would say that the one thing that I learned from this film, and really have spent sort of a year probably annoying my children, but just refusing single-use plastic. So I take a stainless steel straw with me. I didn't bring my bag, but it's in my bag, and I will refuse single-use plastic and not ask for, I'll say, please don't give me a straw. I'll put the stainless steel straw in, and then use that as a teachable moment to see if I can get a restaurant to stop using the plastic. So I think it's personal. I think it's behavioral. I think it's almost going to be like the anti-smoking campaign. It's so pervasive, and I think because I think people get very overwhelmed and they go, "What can we do?" And I think one way that you can feel like you're making a small change is really to work on refusing that single-use plastic, which is used for a minute, an hour, a day, and then it's in our waste stream forever. But there are organizations, I'd say Plastic Pollution Coalition is one of the best at organizing and mobilizing people. They're now on college campuses and doing plastic-free campuses, and I don't know if COA is involved with that, but they're active. They're working with Harvard right now with the Center for Health and the Environment. So there's ways of bringing that to the local college campus and state level.
Yes?
A couple of things. In San Jose, California, they completely outlawed the use of plastic bags. Just stopped them. This was like, I think last year it went into effect. The other thing on Taunton Bay, which runs directly into Frenchman's Bay, there's a huge plant for salmon, and what they say they're doing is disease-resistant
I'm not.
I'm not either.
It's a local salmon production plant. The question was about, and some concerns about, I guess, how they're using both the fresh water and the salt water. I mean, I think we need, and when the Pew Commission met, by the way, we just really touched. There were two interesting subjects that we hardly touched on, and one really was farmed fish. We were dealing with a wild fish, and that's a big regret of mine, a little feedback. Since that time, we have passed the 50% mark globally, that 50% of all that we eat from the sea is farmed. So to me, the answer is appropriate regulation that enables the fisheries businesses to make a good living and keeps the people healthy and the wild fish healthy. I don't know anything about that particular situation, so I certainly won't make any comment about whether I think it's a good or a bad thing, but we need fresh air on the subject, we need good regulations, and we need to encourage people to go into the business.
Would be a good project for a COA student.
For a COA student,
to do some
yes.
due diligence on
No,
that.
That's great, that's good. Yes, there is a question here.
I think the consumer needs help. For instance, I happened to see a ghastly thing on television about where they raise shrimp in Thailand.
Yeah.
So I now have the sense to look at every bag of shrimp that I would like to buy. It's almost impossible to buy shrimp that's locally here in Florida around here. But the consumer also, I need, I feel, help when I buy farm-raised fish. I think I would feel better if there were something like what they put on chickens or the good
Right.
housekeeping seal of approval. It is that come from, or the little things they have on the cans of tuna that I always look for to know that they're dolphin safe and dolphin free. I think the consumers need to be given aids too so they can help the effort. And the thing, of course, that would help the most is hitting people in their pockets. And if consumers refuse to buy things, or
Right.
the other thing, which it goes back to the same thing, I'm always so appalled when I go to a restaurant and see there's always swordfish, everybody hurts their hate for this, and wonderful Chilean sea bass, all of which are endangered. And it's too bad there isn't some way that either the consumer can be told more forcefully which fish are the most endangered, just in general advertising on television or something, or if there was some pressure or some way restaurants could be, of course, they're the biggest sellers, but if they weren't there for people to buy for their dinner, they wouldn't be buying other things.
Yeah, just the question is about how to get consumers to understand, what fish are endangered, what they're eating, and how to engage the restaurants and to help really work toward a sustainable practice of eating fish. And I would say that there are a lot of restaurants that are working on that. There is a labeling campaign. Oceana is working on a seafood fraud campaign. Something like 1 out of 3 fish is mislabeled. So you think you're getting a grouper and you're getting a tilapia. So, and even in terms of the way that the fish is handled, like you are told it's a fresh Alaskan salmon, but it's, they get it in Alaska, they flash freeze it, they send it to Asia, they thaw it, they fillet it, they freeze it again, they send it back, and there's no traceability of what's going on. And so that's a campaign that Oceana's just started, and we have DNA samples, and we're working with different states to sort of see what's going on, because the fraud is unbelievable. I mean, you think you're eating something and you're not. And in terms of the labeling, again, some, like Whole Foods will have some labeling on sustainable seafood, but it's tough. I mean, I don't eat shrimp anymore because I know too much about what's going on in terms of the bycatch and especially, you know, in the Gulf and in Thailand. So I just can't do it.
But I do think the consumer is a big part of the answer. I think you're right about that.
You need massive education. That's what we need. Yeah.
We need a mermaid stamp and everything.
We do.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Thank you, John.
Good, good.
Megan.
Excellent. There's some in the back, in the middle.
Megan.
Oh, sorry, Megan.
Is there any organization or country that's attacking the problem with the Pacific Gyre with the actual garbage that's there? I mean, I know we're trying to put less out there, but has anyone actually removed that from the ocean yet?
I can answer that. Unless-
Yeah.
Yeah, so Megan's question was, is anyone working to remove the plastic from the gyre in the Pacific? And there is no way to remove the plastic. And if someone says, honestly, if someone says there is, I'd be really surprised. It's like a soup. It's a plastic soup with very small particles, and you can't get the nurdles, and there's just no way that they've figured out a cost-effective way to do it, nor can they do it. So
Like plastic minestrone the size of Texas, and you're taking a ladle of whatever size you have and, you know, putting it in a barge and then
trying to
where are you
siphon the
taking it?
plastic off.
What are you doing? So that probably is, reducing the amount of new plastic is probably the best way to keep from doing that. And the problem with that gyre is not so much that people are running into it, because it is like a minestrone soup more than a building of plastic. I think the problem is ingestion, and so it is an issue. It's not a problem of navigation, but of ingestion, and we've got to just stop creating the plastic, and certainly stop throwing the plastic into the oceans.
And just one other thing about the plastic, as much as that is an issue that really engages people, but in terms of, you know, what are the issues that are plaguing the ocean, that's not the number one issue at all. I mean, it'd be maybe down number 10, you know. I mean, really, it's
visible, but
it's
it's
visible
not the
and
biggest.
it's visceral, but the real issue is, you know, to me, the real issue is how do you restore depleting fish stocks and to enforce the existing laws so that we can replenish the wild fish. And, you know, when you look from a food security standpoint at the increase of population and climate change and the amount of water that's needed for agriculture, you've got this perfect pure protein in wild fish, and it's the most cost-effective per pound compared to beef and chicken and pork, and it does not need a freshwater input. So as we move toward water scarcity and needing to feed a hungrier planet, we have seemed to overlook the importance of 70% of the planet that, if managed properly, can rebound and really feed, you know, something like 700 million meals a day right now. So to me, that's really what's at stake is the
We have
fish.
2 in the back, there's 1 in the middle, and then 1 on the edge.
I wanted to get back to your approach to the filmmakers because it feels a little bit like a left brain, right brain piece. Our conversations
You
are
got
about
it.
the scientific aspects, what we can all do as a community. And yet your film I found very inspiring, uplifting about it in the face of all of this very hard information. And you bring in the arts, you bring in activists, you sort of expand the vision along with the mermaid. And I'm just curious how you think about the non-scientific, the artistic side of this, and how you reach your audience with that piece.
That's a great question. And I think it gets back to what you were talking about in terms of human ecology. And, you know, my sense is that if you think about myths, they are in every culture, and the mermaid exists. I mean, I started thinking about the mermaid, and all of a sudden they were everywhere. It's like I go into Starbucks and there's the coffee cup, and then there's books, and you know, we're traveling in Mexico, and everywhere we look, we see mermaids in the museums and piñatas, and it's amazing once you start to look and think about something like that. It can probably be anything that's somewhat archetypal, but I just happen to focus on the mermaid. But I do think that the answers to so many of these problems are, we need different ways of thinking and new ways of thinking, and we need to look at it from a creative standpoint. And you need the science, but you also need to instill and engage the heart. And I don't think anyone will really fight to save something unless they love what it is that they're trying to save. So my hope is that someone, and all of us here, love the water. We're on one of the most beautiful places in the world, I think, and there's so much mystery, and we, you know, spend our time walking on the, you know, rocky beaches and paddleboarding or whatever we're doing, sailing, and we're creating memories and moments that sustain us, whether it's through hard times or thinking about peaceful and wonderful family moments. So, you know, my hope is that the artists that are the storytellers, and I think we need writers, we need journalists, we need everybody to get involved to help raise the awareness. And, you know, I personally do think that the arts and film can really help, because this can go viral. You know, I'm working on the curriculum. It's going to lots of festivals. I mean, many. It's great what's going on just with Twitter and Facebook, and my hope is to get people that aren't scientists. I mean, we can't be preaching to the converted. I'd like to get all the people that don't, you know, that might believe in angels and mermaids, but not global warming. You know, that will say, you know, I love mermaids, whether you believe in them or not. It's really it's the archetype of all of us telling stories to our kids, and what do you remember, and where do you go to dream? And I think we need people that are dreamers and artists, and combined with the scientists and the lawyers and all of us working together to make this change. And it is right-left, because you can't just have the science to get people to really motivate toward change and activism. If you think of any movement, you know, whether it's Gandhi or Martin Luther King, or we were just in South Africa, apartheid, anything that really captivates someone and creates a movement, it's about a heart-based feeling of justice. And I don't think it necessarily comes from just science, but you definitely, most importantly, need the science to push the policy and the advocacy.
So Darren, do we have a chance for one more or two questions? How are we doing?
Take one or two.
Okay, but there was a hand back there for quite a while on the aisle.
I just wanted to make the point, I live in Montclair, Vermont, where the disposable food movement is so huge that you barely ever eat seafood at all, except for me because my parents are Maine. And I'm actually a music teacher in a public school where the other teachers are very passionate about education, so I wanted to underline the point that elementary school students even are so passionate that when they leave and go on a field trip, there's nowhere to compost, they get upset. So there's
So great. Welcome, thank you. Bob.
Bob?
Regarding the oceans, are there any accepted metrics that you can measure the scope of the problem, the progress that's being made?
Well, I could start on that.
Okay, and then I'll.
Yes. Are there metrics that are measuring the scope of the problem or progress being made on the problems? So a couple of examples. One of them is in the making. Bo Wrigley from Chicago, now Palm Beach mostly, is partnering with Conservation International to come up with clean water statistics harbor by harbor, bay by bay around the world. Not sure exactly yet how he's going to accomplish it. Greg Stone, the diver and the scientist for CI, is working with him on this. So there is somebody addressing that piece, and I think it'll be great because to the extent that people around the world with the great Olympic spirit, for example, are competitive about whether their harbor is clean or not. Hopefully that kind of thing is going to work. At another level, Craig Venter, Rick knows him very well, a great sailor and a great scientist, is on a mission now to identify the DNA in the ocean. Can't say quite how far along he is, a couple of years, I think. So that's a massive and wonderful project. Then there was the census of the fishes, blocking on the name.
Ausubel.
Yes, Jesse Ausubel, actually at Rockefeller University, and he has completed, with backing of a major foundation, a census of how many fish there are in the sea. And I think, Darren, do you know, is it called the census of the fishes, the census of sea life, or census of fishes? I think so. And it's very comprehensive. So yes, we are beginning to get a handle on it. The most startling statistic that the Pew Oceans Commission first came up with or heard, I think it was published in Science Magazine in the early part of this millennium, and it was the fact that 90% of the big fish have been fished out of the ocean in a period of now, it's just the last 60 years. That's just a stunning statistic. It's stunning in two ways. To me, one, that we could do it, you know, Ray, for us, we're so clever, and the other, that we would do it not realizing the consequences of what we're doing. So yes, there are some things like that.
And I was just going to say, in terms of metrics, what Oceana is looking at is, you know, how to save the oceans and feed the world. And there are 25 countries that land the most metric tons of fish, and it accounts for 71% of the fish in the ocean. And if we can work with those countries and enact, you know, and enforce legislation within that 200-mile limit, there's much more fish tonnage within that 200-mile limit, not within the high seas where the tuna and some of the bigger fish are, you know, 90% depleted. So we are looking at metrics to say strategically which countries should we go in to and partner with, so that we can really help conserve the majority of fish tonnage, not biodiversity, but the tonnage of fish that's actually used for human consumption.
Great audience, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.